Hey everybody, welcome. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where in the world you're logging from. Thanks a lot for coming to Target Test Prep webinar. So obviously big news on the GMAT front. We received news recently that it looks like the GMAT is going to be changing. And shortly thereafter, we noticed a lot of anxiety surrounding the changes, a lot of questions, a lot of stress. Understandably, GMAT's a big part of the business school application process, and just many people have been studying hard for months, and people who are about to start studying. So we wanted to do this webinar even though not all of the information here we're going to present is 100% confirmed. Okay, I think that's very important that we highlight that at the beginning of the presentation. I'll continue to remind you the only people at this point who have the true knowledge of how the new GMAT is going to be are the GMAC and the folks who are working on the test, and we're anxiously awaiting, eagerly awaiting more information from them. But we wanted to tell you what we seem to know at this point, and this is going to be a webinar of positivity and I hope and low anxiety. So let me first start by saying there's nothing to worry about. The GMAT's changing, no big deal. For most of the people on the call, that's going to be zero factor. If you've been studying for the current version of the GMAT, this looks like it will continue on for some time. Again, speculative at this point, but looks like it will continue on at least until the beginning of 2024. And, we know the GMAC to be a very fair company who's student-centered. And they're not going to do anything crazy like, pull out their current legacy GMAT and give you folks 6 weeks notice. We expect, based on everything we know about the GMAC and the GMAT, this to be an orderly process that will keep students and universities in mind. So the first thing I want to say is don't worry about this. This is not something to worry about. And if that's all you wanted to hear and you want to tune out now, no harm, no foul. It's okay. Don't worry about it. If you want to stick around, we're going to go over what we think we know. And of course, the new official guides should be coming out in the really near future. Of course, if any of the information needs to change, we'll update you folks with another webinar. But the goal here is to lower anyone's anxiety, talk openly, right, to the community and see what questions people have and see what information we can pass back and forth. Again, being honest and open that a lot of this information is speculative at the moment. So we'll all be fluid and flexible if and when new information arises. So Jeff, you can start the first slide, okay?
Yep.
All right. So new version of the exam. Apparently it's going to be called GMAT Focus. People's real question, I think, is how much does this change the way I'm going to prepare, the things I have to think about, the content that's going to be on the test? We'll talk about these things here step by step, but the big picture is not too much, right? It's still going to be very much what you expect, what you're used to. Even if you're going to take the new GMAT, even with the changes that it seems are coming online, it's still going to be a challenging test. It's still going to be a test you have to study for. It's still going to be a test that's important for business school applications. It's just going to have some changes that do seem to be more student friendly and probably do address some of the issues that could be happening, with the current version of the GMAT. So even though there appear to be some significant changes in the structure and the content, at the end of the day, this is pretty much, at least from my point of view, going to be business as usual for people, if you're going to choose at some point to take the GMAT Focus, the new version of the GMAT. Again, not something to worry about. So no anxiety. This is probably going to be a positive thing for people, not to worry. So Jeff, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so the big thing people want to know, when's it going to be released? We haven't got definitive word from GMAT yet, but it looks like maybe the end of the year with some language that might allow it to come online sooner. I think most people in the industry who I've spoken with kind of feel like it's coming online, maybe in the fall, maybe in the end of the year, maybe sooner, but don't worry about it. So a lot of the questions people have had is they're like, well, maybe sooner, Scott. What if it comes online in April? Great. What if it comes online tomorrow? Who cares? If you're studying for the current version of the GMAT, you can continue to study for the current version of the GMAT. And although I can't say for sure, I would be 1,000, 10 billion, 20% shocked if anyone studying for the current GMAT was at any disadvantage now or in the foreseeable future. So I don't see the current GMAT putting anyone at any disadvantage. If they're continuing to study for it and take it, I think that's just perfect. I think business as usual for the current GMAT. I would look at this as a positive. If all of a sudden the new GMAT came online tomorrow or April 15th or October 15th, and you had the option to take both, great. Consider it lucky timing for yourself, right? Maybe you want to test the waters with the new GMAT just to see, right? Just to see, could it be better for you, right? As long as you're not getting sidetracked. I'd hate to see anybody who was 85% done with the current GMAT all of a sudden have to change and then be, 40% done with the new GMAT. We don't want that because obviously we know you have applications and everything else to do. But I would look at this as a positive thing, not a stressful thing, right? Maybe you don't need to even think about the new GMAT. Maybe you want to think about it. Maybe you're a person who didn't score too well in the current GMAT and you're like, ooh, I love the new version of the GMAT. They're all just options for you, ladies and gentlemen. Don't look at this as a stressful thing. It looks like the new official guide is coming out soon. I happen to see it on Amazon. It looks like it was taken down since then. I'm not sure exactly, I'm not going to speculate on what that was or why. But it does seem to be coming back in the near future. So the good news, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to know with conclusivity what's going to be on the GMAT focus. Again, at this point, this is our best estimation to communicate what we know to the community. When the official guide comes out, I'm sure that will coincide with further factual releases by GMAT, and we'll, of course, we'll be watching those earnestly. It does look like, and I would honestly expect the current GMAT to stay for some time during the transition period. So I would not worry about the current GMAT going away and all of a sudden being forced to study for a new test. That's not the way the GMAT operates as an honorable organization, ladies and gentlemen. So don't worry about that. That was one of the biggest questions we had is, hey, what if they get rid of the current GMAT and I'm forced to take the new GMAT? Can't see that happening. In fact, I would say that's never going to happen. So don't worry about that. So this is not going to affect people's timelines. This is not going to affect people applying to business school round 1, round 2. Look at it as an option. Don't look at this as a negative thing at all. Next slide, please, Jeff. Okay, big grain of salt, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, this is not an official announcement. This is what appears based on the information that's been swirling around. That's going to be happening. Should any of this be wrong, we'll know in the very near future. We'll know with ample time to correct it, and we'll do another webinar. We'll get the correct information out there. Okay, so we don't have any insider knowledge, right? This is what appears to be changing based on the information out there. So it looks like a shorter test. Shorter test is good for people, right? The less time you have to spend at a testing center or at your computer, the better. So that's favorable for students. Is it really a shorter test? Well, let's assume that this information is correct. It might actually be the same time under tension, so to speak, if you look at sort of the time it takes for people to do the current quant and verbal sections of the test. It might not be a huge time savings, but being there for less time is certainly a positive thing if that's the changes that occur. Section structure, right? It appears that we're going to be going to 3 sections: quant, verbal, data insight. Data insights is probably going to be a mix of integrated reasoning and data sufficiency. Looks that way at the moment. So not a huge change in terms of the content. I mean, problem solving will probably continue to be problem solving. Data sufficiency will probably continue to be data sufficiency. Data insights probably be what you know about integrated reasoning, maybe with some harder questions. This is my speculation. I have no factual basis for this. They might be using this as a way to adjust the scaling score scales a little bit, maybe throw in some harder questions for the top end of the scale. I don't know. I'm not sure. That's my own personal feeling. We'll have to kind of see as things come. Yeah, there's some buzz about no geometry coming into quant, and there's some buzz about no sentence correction coming into verbal. Seems reasonable. We'll kind of have to wait and see. Another nice feature, if true, seems to be a section order selection. In the current GMAT, there's a few sort of sections you can choose, section orders you can choose. It looks like you're going to have full section flexibility in the new one. So data insights, quant, verbal, data insights, quant, those permutations. I think that's positive for students. Looks like IR, which now becomes the data insights, is going to become part of the composite score. So looks like the IR section or the data insight section is going to become part of the adaptive nature of the test, right? And become baked into the total score, which appears to maybe be out of 805. We'll have to see for sure. But it looked as if they could be changing the score. Again, we'll know in the real near future. We'll know factually, with plenty of time for all you folks. If you're going to choose to take the new GMAT, you'll have plenty of time. That's interesting. Good, bad, or indifferent, I'm not sure yet. It does make sense. I mean, IR has been there for a long time. I mean, I was waiting for the day that IR would become part of the total composite score and be an adaptive section. With the use of big data in business schools and marketing and technology and machine learning and data science, I mean, it does make sense that schools would be requesting this to become a more important part of the test. What can you do now if you've been thinking about it? Well, you could put more weight on integrated reasoning. TTP, Target Test Prep, is just recently released more integrated reasoning materials. We have a ton in the pipeline that are finished and partial stages being finished. We're going to be releasing that to our students just to make sure that if any of them are thinking about taking the new GMAT, that they're going to be well prepared to do so. So you could double down on your integrated reasoning practice if you're thinking about this. Another feature that's been circling around, it seems like a smart move, is the ability to review and edit up to 3 questions per section. I like it. I mean, there's debate back and forth. Is that going to cause unnecessary anxiety, unnecessarily time pressure? I don't think so. You don't have to. I mean, I think it's nice. Hey, you can edit up to 3 questions. I mean, certainly there are times where actually question 4 on quant, you're like, oh man, did I do it right? And then you get to question 8 and you're like, no, I didn't do question 4 right. Not because you're thinking back. You never want to be thinking back. But something about question 8 jogs your brain. You're like, oh man, it was a permutation, not a combination. Well, now, 3 questions, reasonable, you go back. And it seems, again, I'm going to keep saying this, we don't have conclusivity on this yet completely, but it looks that way. Have the ability to change 3 questions per section. That's nice. I wouldn't look at that as a bad thing. I would say, hey, I have a little more flexibility. And of course, it'll take some getting used to if that's the case. It's not like the jury where you can change just about anything, which I think is nice. So I think overall, if these are the changes so far, they seem to be some pretty smart changes for the test. Next slide, Jeff. Thanks. Okay. So, obviously it looks like there's going to be some changes in the time question count. So 21 quant, 23 verbal, 20 data insights. Makes sense, right? 45, 45, 45. So a 3-way split. Problem solving. Yeah, it looked like there was no geometry in the official guide. So it's probably a reasonable inference that there won't be geometry. I don't know. As I'll say it 10,000 times today. If there is geometry, great. we'll adapt for it. We already have it. You guys already know how to study geometry. If geometry is there, great. It looks at the moment as if it won't be, though. Verbal, looks like we're losing sentence correction. Looks like it's going to be critical reasoning, reading comp. If that's the case, the top question I got, is that good or bad? I see good or bad, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, it's a little bad in the sense that, at least for me, sentence correction was a gimme, right? Once you kind of went to the TTP sentence correction course, you probably wouldn't get any of those questions wrong. They were a little bit faster. At the same time, it's less to study, right? I mean, if you don't have sentence correction, there's a lot of content you're not going to have to study for verbal reasoning, if this is where the direction of GMAT goes. Critical reasoning is very learnable. Reading comprehension is very learnable. They're just a little bit more time consuming for people, in my experience. So people might have to get better at verbal than they would have with some sentence correction questions sprinkled in, right? Because in my sort of thought, the sentence correction is a little faster than these questions. At least for me, it takes me a lot longer to solve a CR than it does for a sentence correction. So we might have to get a lot better at CR and RC, but we'll see. The data insights, again, looks like that's going to probably be the data sufficiency we know and love now with the IR question types. We don't know yet if there'll be new question types or anything unusual popping into the mix. Obviously, it's going to change our average time per question. So, right, once we know all this is factual, people taking the new test will have to make some adjustments to their test strategy, their timing strategy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the big things on the content, the hype, the speculation is no geometry, no sentence correction. Half of the people haven't liked that I've spoken to. Some people love geometry. It's pretty easy to learn. The rules are pretty straightforward. Yeah, there's a lot of critical thinking, but once you get a foundation, it's easy. A lot of people have loved SC, and then some people have felt exactly the reverse, that they hate SC and they're happy to see it go, and they don't like geometry and they're more than happy with that change. So I think it depends on how you feel about those two subjects. Next section, Jeff, please. Oh, okay, right. So we've been talking about this big thing I didn't mention yet is appears no more AWA. Fine with that. It's less for people to study, right? No essay. Shorter test, less to work on. Not that people spent a lot of time preparing for the essay before anyway. But look, in the whole grand scheme of business school applications with everything that you've got going on, it's one last thing to have to consider. So look, if they do away with the essay, I'm sure no one will be upset about that. Next slide, please, Jeff. Right. Again, not confirmed by the GMAT, but it looks like a score scale change, right? Each section, scale of 60 to 90 in 1-point increments. Total score 205 to 805 in 10-point increments. Again, should that change, we'll let you know. Again, we'll caveat with the fact that it seems this is what's happening, just to get people thinking about it. Why is the 805? Who knows? The psychometricians at the GMAT have the answer to this, right? There's something special about these numbers that allows things to work and scales to work and, changes in people's test scores to work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, looks like it's going to be based on the 3 sections of the test baked into the total score. One of the biggest questions people have is, if I take the current GMAT and say I got a 770, how does that correspond to a new GMAT focus score? And the answer is we don't know yet, but they've thought about it. And no one is going to be at a disadvantage because they took the current GMAT. And will it take school some time? Like if it's true that there's a new scale, will it take school some time? Yeah, sure. It will take school some time to figure out what these new scores mean. But that's okay. Anytime there's a change, there's going to be an adjustment period. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, in my experience in this crazy world of test prep and GMAT prep and business school applications, the changes are pretty favorable with people because I feel like everyone is flexible, right? Admissions folks are a little flexible. GMAC is a little flexible. It's not going to turn the tide when you're getting into a school. But who knows? Like maybe all of a sudden you're a 690 is a little more powerful than it was before, so to speak. Who knows? Maybe because of all the uncertainty, maybe because they're adjusting scales. I tend to see admissions people give people the benefit of the doubt anytime they possibly can. They're looking for reasons to admit people. They're not looking for reasons to keep people out. So I wouldn't worry too much about the scoring. It will be whatever it's going to be. It looks like some interesting features. You can see the score on test day before you select your score recipients. Send 5 recipients for free on test day. It looks like after you send to see the score, right? And it looks like you can send one official score rather than your entire score history. Pretty cool. I mean, again, we'll have to see what happens. Even kind of looks like maybe you're going to get the enhanced score report at no additional cost. I mean, GMAT hasn't said that, but they have a lot of language that indicates more personalized, more detailed data analytics on your performance. So it looks like perhaps it's going to get baked in. We'll see. Either way, it looks like they're moving to be more student focused, more student friendly of an exam, which is great. Jeff, next slide, please. Okay. Yeah. A lot of people, they say, hey, let's talk about the differences, right? Well, look, a lot of these are pretty self-evident. The time is going down. The number of sections is going down. Section types are going down. We've talked about the potential question types, and we've talked about the potential time per section. The key thing, again, I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, right, and I'm going to keep emphasizing this, is if you're already studying for the current GMAT, I don't see a reason to go to the new GMAT. Now, if that changes in the future and we see the official guide and we're like, wow, you got to take the new GMAT, no matter if you've been studying, we'll let you know. But I just can't see that happening. It's not like the new GMAT is going to be easy. I think that's a key point, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it's becoming shorter. Yes, it's probably becoming a little more student focused, but I can't see it all of a sudden becoming an easy test. That's a key thing to think about. Shorter doesn't mean necessarily mean easier. Fewer questions doesn't mean easier. Fewer things to prep doesn't mean easier. Could be shorter prep period, but it doesn't mean that the test itself is going to be easier. So do not. What people have asked is, hey, it looks like the GMAT is going to be easier. Should I wait? No, it's a horrible decision. Horrible decision, especially if you've already been preparing, if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, the more percent of your GMAT prep you already have done, the worse of a decision it is for you to wait to take this. I cannot see it being an easier test. And the next question is, people say why? And I say, well, for a lot of reasons. But I said, look, if this is a test being accepted by Harvard Business School, Stanford, Wharton, Kellogg, Columbia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's never going to be an easy test. It's going to be a beatable test. If you study hard, you study smart, you put the time in, you practice, you can do well. Everyone can do well, but it's never going to be an easy test. So the one thing I want to emphasize is don't wait thinking the new GMAT is somehow going to be easier than the current GMAT. That's really, really, really important. Jeff, next slide, please. Okay. Yeah. Just kind of.
Go back. Yeah, I don't know if these are.
Yeah, this is a summary. Yeah, this is a summary, guys. There's no problem. We can skip this. I've already gone over it.
Score range, you're good.
Yeah, score range is good. I mean, look, yeah, some changes.
All right, this is good.
Yeah, so some key takeaways, ladies and gentlemen. Shorter, probably expected come the fall, but it could come sooner. If it comes sooner, who cares? It's just an option for people. 3 sections, quant, verbal, data, insights. They all appear to be baked into the total score, all adaptive on a 205 to 805 score. Looks like no sentence correction, looks like no geometry. Thinking skills remain the same or even get a boost in sort of the skills necessary to do well on the test. A lot of people have asked, if you're using target test prep, what do you do? Keep using it. Don't make the changes. Don't make any changes to what you're doing. No matter what percent you are through TTP, if you're studying for the current GMAT, at this point, there's no reason to abandon that and wait for the new GMAT to come in. I think that's very important. I think we have some questions. Let me see if we can open up the question pane and see what people are asking.
Yeah, I don't know if I can see them from my screen.
Yeah.
I can try to.
We have a lot. Someone said taking the test in July or August, I have nothing to worry about. In my opinion, nothing to worry about if you're taking the test for July and August. I would be shocked if the GMAC did anything that would jeopardize people taking the test for a long time. I think the current GMAT would be here for a extended period of time, so that if you're studying, you even plan to take it, maybe even throughout the whole year, and the next year, the current GMAT is going to be around. So I would not worry about that. People are, preparing for the test is question 2. Yeah, I wouldn't change the way you're preparing. We just don't have enough information yet, ladies and gentlemen. I would not change the way you're preparing. So I would continue to work on sentence correction, and I would continue to work on geometry. I would not abandon sentence correction and geometry. We don't know when the new test is coming online, okay? And you don't know if you're going to take it. So I would continue holding the course as is. Someone is asking about verbal. It looks like verbal will most likely be a mix of critical reasoning and reading column. There's been some speculation that maybe the critical reasoning will begin introducing new topics like more deductive logic or more LSAT-ish stuff. We don't know at this point. It's a possibility. I mean, it's another angle that test maker could use to test the test taker's thinking skills. But at this point, we don't know that for a fact. So at the moment, we're going to assume it's CR as usual, RC as normal. Someone's asking, is the new GMAT going to be more challenging? We don't know. It's certainly not going to be easier. As I said, if you love sentence correction, you love geometry, you might say to yourself, it's more challenging. If you hate sentence correction, you hate geometry, you might say to yourself, it's less challenging. If you appreciate all the new features of the test, like potentially being shorter, potentially being able to fix the answer choices, no AWA, it's certainly becoming a more user-friendly test, it appears. So those are all very positive things. When will we know the final format? Well, it looks like the official guide should be coming out soon. I mean, look, I can't imagine how big of an operation is in the part of the GMAC to produce the test prep materials and the official guides and release a new test. So, it looks like they're coming out soon, within weeks. You know what? If there's a delay, which could happen, to be honest, then it's probably a good thing. It just sort of extends this process out a little bit more, gives people even a little bit more buffer, who are currently studying for the legacy GMAT to be sure that they have enough time. People who started using TTP, how should they tackle the course? Don't do anything. The day we know conclusively what will be on GMAT focus, you guys, we've already been preparing for it. We always have a bunch of scenarios in mind where we push those changes in short order. Should any TTP users need GMAT focus, what we'll probably do is give you access to legacy GMAT and probably give you access to GMAT focus simultaneously should you need it. So don't worry, TTP is going to continue to have you covered regardless of changes. Taking the test in June, will my score be valid for the next 5 years? I think so. I would hope so. I would be shocked if not, right? So the 5-year validity, I would be shocked if GMAT said we're avoiding the 5-year validity. It wouldn't make any sense to me. So my strongest opinion is yes, the last person who takes the last GMAT, the last day the current GMAT is offered, that test will be valid for 5 years. And again, ladies and gentlemen, business schools are composed of honorable people and goodwill, good-natured people. I fully believe that they would accept that GMAT score for 5 years. Okay. Is IR part of the 800 score? I mean, it's still technically unknown, but if we look at the pieces of information that have circulated, it sure as heck seems that IR will almost certainly be baked into the 205 to 805 score. 3 sections: quant, verbal, data insights. Data insights, as we said, was probably integrated reasoning plus data sufficiency. So the IR is going to be getting more important. Someone was asking, is that good or bad? Well, it's not good or bad. It is what it is. I mean, I guess it could be great if you love graphs and pattern interpretation and shifting through multiple pieces of information. If you don't, no big deal. You gotta learn to love it, and you gotta get good at it. So either way, the good news about GMAT test takers is they're a resilient group and they get the job done. So whether you love or hate IR, if it becomes a permanent portion of the test of the composite score, it's just going to be something that you have to master. Why did they change the current GMAT format? I don't know. I don't have enough information. I have a lot of speculation. Obviously, I'm not a part of the GMAC. I assume, just as all companies are, they're trying to improve and trying to innovate and make the test more user-friendly for folks. It's no surprise, no shock, or no news to people that GMAT administrations have been down in recent years. So that's probably a good time to bring a refreshed version of the test that maybe speaks more to the current test-taking population of people. That would be my guess, which I think is good for the end user, which is all you folks. They probably are listening to people's comments and concerns and what they want, what they don't want. And that's great. I mean, that's what we want any organization to do, be it the GMAC or TTP or anybody else. Will they be changing the TTP? Yes, for sure. The first day that we have factual knowledge, target test prep users will start seeing a push to prep them for the legacy GMAT. For the GMAT Focus, the new GMAT, should they choose it. So yeah, don't worry about that. We'll be completely on top of any changes. We'll continue to deliver exceptional content to you folks with slick UI, UX, and cool tech features. So yeah, don't worry about that. GMAT attempts be counted once in the Focus edition. I don't know the answer to that yet. Someone's wondering, like, hey, lifetime attempts and everything. I don't know if the slate will be wiped clean or if there'll be a merging of the two. The lifetime limit or the number of times you could take it per year. I think that is something we have to wait and see. When do we think the current GMAT format will be put into practice? That's a good question. I don't know. I could be wrong. My guess is later in the year. I would be surprised if it came out sooner. But as I said, whatever. If it comes out tomorrow, great. You guys have options. If it comes out on April 11th, great. My mom's birthday. You guys have options, okay? So I wouldn't look at it either way as a bad thing. I would look at it as a positive thing. If you're weaker in SC geometry, seems helpful. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. If you're weaker in SC and geometry and you hate those two, it seems like an advantage for people. As long as you're also strong in CR and RC and everything else in IR, right? Because it's not only what's leaving the test, it's what's going to be there. We're performing on what's there. We're not performing on what's not there. Don't think it's easy. That's the biggest mistake that people make in GMAT prep in general, is they underestimate the difficulty of the test. That's one of the number one things we see in people who don't get the score they deserve, is that they've underestimated the difficulty. They're like, hey, this test should take me 3 months to do. I'm not studying more than 90 days. And unfortunately for that person, it could have been a 5 or a 6 month process and they would have got a great score, but they didn't give it the respect it demands. So that's why I want to be careful about not calling the new GMAT easy. It's not going to be easy. It won't be easier, that's for sure. It'll be different, but it won't be easier. So let's not hope that the new GMAT is going to be easier. Okay, that would be a mistake. Do you think this change will make people choose the GRE more? I don't know. I don't have enough insight into that. It's a good question. So I'm not going to purport to be an expert on that. If you're asking me to give my best opinion on that, I think we're probably going to bring more people back to the GMAT. I think probably the change will, anyone who left or is planning to leave the GMAT for the GRE, I can only think that making some smart improvements to the GMAT will bring people back from the GRE to the GMAT. So no, I don't see any reason why I would make people choose the GRE. At least, just in my humble opinion, it seems like it will bring more people back to the GMAT. Will score be determined by quant verbal only? It looks as if it's going to be 3 sections: composite score, IR, which is data insights, quant and verbal. So 3 scored sections, no essay. Will this be recorded? Yes, it's recorded. Let's see. Is the session too generic? We already know all this. You were ahead of the game. Should have had you come in and do the presentation. Just kidding. Let's see. Started my prep and finished 5% of TTP. Planning on taking the exam in June. Should I wait? I wouldn't wait. I want to emphasize that. I would not wait. Look, ladies and gentlemen, if a month you see the new official guide and you're like, I love the new GMAT, great. You have our blessing. Abandon what you've done and take the new GMAT should you think that's a good move for you. I just don't see that happening. I really don't. So I want you to be optimistic about the new GMAT, but I don't want you to look at it in a way that distracts you or takes you off course of your goals. Let's see. Questions. I ordered OG23 and Amazon updated status throughout this month. Is that true? Yeah, we've heard that a couple times, that Amazon did say that the OG is arriving at the end of the month. So that's the information I'm working on as well. I got similar information. So let's hope that's accurate. And the OG is coming. Data sufficiency, will they be the same as they are now? It seems that way, right? Who knows? I mean, if something changes, then they'll let us know. But data sufficiency, pretty cool question type. It's been there for a long time. I would suspect that there's no changes to data sufficiency. Like, what would you do? It's called data sufficiency. It works. Like, why fix something that's not broken? Why improve something that works tremendously well? Let's see. I'm not preparing for applying to business schools right now. I'm planning to take the GMAT because I have time to apply. That's a tough one. That's the first tough question. So basically, we have a person. They're not applying to business schools now. They want to take the GMAT. They have time to prep. It's a tough one. If you ask me, I can only tell you what I would do. I would take the current GMAT. I wouldn't wait. I wouldn't wait to see what happens with the new one. I'm not saying the new one's going to be bad. It's just not the way I operate. For me, a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. You won't be at a disadvantage for sure by taking the current GMAT. So yeah, if you're asking me what I would do, I would get studying. I don't see a reason to wait. Question about TTP. Once you set up a new TT for GMAT focus, is there a way to bring in the work a student has done? No, that's going to be challenging. So someone's basically saying, if there's a TTP legacy course and a TTP GMAT focus course, can you blend the data? We have to think about it. And how to think about it poses a tech challenge to blend those together. And because it's for a short period of time, I'm not sure the juice is worth the squeeze. But if that's a feature that many people are asking and it seems like a necessary part of it, we'll do it. We have a large development team, so if we needed to, I shouldn't say no. I said we'd have to really evaluate whether that's going to be helpful for people, for how many people. But either way, TTP, you'll be able to prepare for the legacy or the new GMAT. Either way, you'll have those materials. Someone's saying, applying to B schools the fall, the legacy exam, how will my score be compared? Yeah, same thing. I wouldn't worry at all. I think whether you're applying with legacy or GMAT focus, the scores will be directly comparable to whatever formulas they use. Yes, TTP will update its syllabus ASAP. We already answered the question on the lifetime limit. We're not sure. The other question. Trying to find ones that we haven't already answered. Should we continue prepping for SC? I've answered that, but I think that's a big one. I would, ladies and gentlemen, I would keep prepping for SC. You just don't know what's going to happen. You want to be prepared to take the current GMAT of the two. If you need the option, you want to be able to take the current GMAT. Let's see. Surprised by the change. Surprised by the change, but not surprised by the change at the same time. I think the change was abrupt. We saw some ramblings of this about a month ago on the internet. And it seemed like an abrupt change the way it kind of transpired, but at the same time, not surprised. I mean, it's not strange that the test would be trying to improve and be a little bit more student friendly. Someone's asking, will GMAT Focus replace the current GMAT or they be both? That's a great question. My guess would be it would replace it. I can't see there being both. I mean, that's, after that initial, I think we heard like 14 months or something of having both. Again, that's not confirmed either, but some period of having both tests, I think they'd have to sunset the current GMAT and bring the new one online, right? Otherwise, what's the point of having a new improved test, right? And then I think that would just be a lot of challenges to operate and have both tests at the same time. 14 months there is some speculation that's about how long the current GMAT would be in existence for, right? So for example, let's say GMAT Focus came online on, July 1st. I wouldn't be surprised if we had at least a year of the current GMAT. They're going to give people enough time who are studying for the current legacy GMAT to work through the process, right? It wouldn't be fair on their part, on the part of the GMAC, to pull the rug out from people and say, hey, surprise, you folks now have to abandon what you've already done and move to the new GMAT. And you know what, guys, they're not going to do it. But even if they did, so what? You're already preparing. Unless there's crazy new question types that we don't know about or new content, like I can't think what that would be. You're already preparing anyway. You're already doing CR. You're already doing RC. You're doing Quant. You're doing IR. So it's probably going to be a matter of just getting used to the new format. Question about the EA. Well, the EA is very different. They're saying, hey, not all schools accept the EA. Will all schools accept the GMAT Focus? I would be 100% sure all schools would accept the GMAT Focus. I mean, that would be the biggest news in business education. And it would be bigger than the GMAT if all of a sudden, some of the top 20 schools stopped accepting the GMAT Focus. And in fact, if you think about how the process works, those top 20 schools probably were the drivers of the GMAT Focus, right? So the GMAC didn't just concoct the GMAT Focus and say, hey, we're going to test this and you guys are going to live with the results. It's the reverse situation. The schools, which I guess are really the end users of these scores, right, have massive input into what's tested, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I would be shocked if any schools didn't accept the new GMAT Focus, largely because they probably had a massive input into the genesis and the creation of the GMAT Focus. Planning to begin study next week with TTP. No, if you're going to study for the GMAT, get started. Again, Mark, I would not wait for this, right? Who knows when it's going to be released? Who knows whether you're going to like it or not? You can get started and at least, if you do choose to switch over to legacy, which I don't recommend at the moment, but if you did, at least you would have a head start. Exam fees, I don't know. That's a good question. Someone's asking about the exam fees relative to the GRE. We don't know that yet. It's a great question. We're wondering the same thing. Will there be a change in the exam fees for students? I'm not sure. Maybe. We'll have to wait and see. Let's see. Current discounts and current TTP. We're not going to charge you for that, guys. If you're using TTP, you want to use both. Listen, that's our job to make sure that we provide TTP users with up-to-date content and we position our students for the best possible results possible. So we'd never charge you for that. If and when GMAT Focus comes online, we'll get you guys the materials for no extra cost. You'll have access to legacy GMAT, you'll have access to GMAT Focus for that transition period. Never in a million years would we expect to charge you folks for that. So don't worry about that. Let's see, how will it affect the percentiles? That's a great question. As more and more people are scoring, into the 700s. Again, this is my own personal suspicion. There's no facts for this whatsoever, except Scott's own sort of crazy brain. Part of this might be to, give more color to the upper end of the spectrum of the scores. There might be harder questions coming online. If there is an 805 score, again, all speculation. Please be careful what I say. Might be a way to further sort of evaluate the top end of the spectrum. Like, as you know, like what's the difference between a 780 and a 790, a 770? The answer is, I don't know, not much, right? Like I would struggle if you say, hey, Scott, why do I need a 780 over a 770? Make me an argument. Like let's ask ChatGPT, like, what would it say? Like, I don't know. I wouldn't have an answer for you. I guess the 780 is technically better than the 770. But would we ever advise anybody to turn in a 770 or put it in your back pocket and study for 780? No, not unless you love studying for the GMAT and you had lots of time. And I don't know. I can't think of a reason, right? So, but maybe with the new scoring, there is a big difference between quote unquote 770 and 780. I don't know. It's all things to think about. Let's see, studying in June, that's a common question, Vivek. No, I wouldn't change. The good news is you can continue studying. And if GMAC releases the official materials in the near future, you can make a game time decision, right? If you actually do want to change. Just don't change if you think it's going to be easier. That's the key thing. Number of attempts. So we already answered that one. We don't know. I would assume if you really want an answer, because this has been asked a bunch of times, my guess would be you have a refreshed series of attempts on the new GMAT. I mean, at least it wouldn't seem completely fair, at least to me, if you had already have some legacy GMAT takes under your belt, it wouldn't seem fair to carry those over to the new GMAT. It would seem like the student-friendly thing to do would be to wipe the slate clean for the new users taking the new GMAT. So, that's my take at least. Those are great questions. Does anybody have anything else I can answer for them? Or Jeff, I'm sorry, I've been rambling for almost an hour. Do you have anything you want to add here to anything I have or haven't said?
I think you covered it pretty well. I think the theme of today is to continue as business as usual, let GMAC announce the things they're going to announce and just applying logic to the situation. Don't expect scores to not count at business schools in the next 5 years. The things that I just wouldn't worry about a lot of stuff that don't seem like they're feasibly or logically going to happen. I think your business school or your current GMAT scores for the current version of the GMAT will last as long as your test is still valid. Business schools will figure out what to do with the new version and the old version. And just don't change your plans because this test is stressful enough. Trying to kind of tiptoe around what might happen isn't going to be helpful for you. So go full bore, and I'm sure more information will be coming out in the next few weeks, the next month, where you can make some decisions then. But for now, just keep at it.
Yeah, and the key thing, ladies and gentlemen, is we wanted to have an open dialogue because there was a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of more questions. I mean, like our intercom channels have like blown up. Like since this has come online, I see GMAT Club as like I don't know, large body of knowledge about sort of the test. We wanted to at least have an open dialogue with you folks and say, hey, there's some stuff we don't know. We'll know soon. Don't worry about it, right? We felt it was better to have a webinar and get it out in the open and say, this is what it seems like happening, than for people to continuously be like, oh my God, what's happening? Is this bad? Is this good? Right? At least, even though there was a lot of uncertainty in this presentation, I think there's also there was some certainty, a lot of certainty in the things that matter to people. So we'll continue to monitor it. Another question, Brian, just make sure I get all these questions answered. Yeah, Brian's asking, is it easier because maybe if you hate SE and geometry? Yeah, as I said, if you hate SE and geometry, but you're really good at CR, RC, and integrated reasoning, yeah, it could be a great change for you. But not an easy change. I'm going to say it 1,000 times this year. Not an easy change. Could be a better change for you, but it doesn't make it easy, right? So yeah, if you hate SC and you hate geometry and you love CR and RC and IR, that's in fact the change that GMAC is going with the test. Yeah, it could be great. And if they release that information, and you know yourself really well, Brian, and you're like, man, I would love to not have to study subject-verb agreement ever again. Of course, man. Consider taking a new test. And someone's asking, like, what do you do? How would you know? Okay, so let's talk about this. This is a great question, actually. This is helpful. Well, how do you know whether to take the GRE or the GMAT now? Well, it's not an easy answer, but we can look for some things that are instructive. And we'll focus on one of them, right? Let's say a student came and say, hey, Scott, I'm thinking about taking the GRE, the GMAT, all my programs accept both. They love and embrace both. Which one do I take? I would say, look, do a GRE practice test, do a GMAT practice test, official, of course, right at the beginning. Look, if they're about the same, then you can move on to some other decision points beyond the topic of this conversation today. But if your GMAT score is way higher, right, than your GRE score, or vice versa, well, that's instructive, right? If you're 95th percentile on the GMAT overall, and you're averaging in the 70s in the sections of the GRE, you probably want to take the GMAT, all else equal. Well, it's going to be the same thing when the new GMAT focus comes online, right? Someone's saying, how do I know which one to take? Let's say you really want to play this game, which I try and encourage people to avoid, because I don't like distractions. But if you really want to play the game, let's say it comes online June 1st, and in July 1st, you're like, you know what, damn it, I want to know. I got to know. Well, take one of both. What's your most recent MBA.com practice test, or what's your most recent official GMAT score versus what do you get in an official practice test in GMAT focus? If they're about the same, I don't know, it's a tough decision. I mean, if your GMAT focus score, which I don't see it happening, to be honest. But if all of a sudden your GMAT focus score, you're the 90th percentile versus the 60th percentile on the legacy GMAT, yeah, of course. Transition to the new GMAT. But don't expect that, ladies and gentlemen. That's massive wishful thinking. Can you imagine all of a sudden skill level A is 90th percentile on the GMAT focus. Skill level A is 70th on their legacy GMAT. I'm not a psychometrician. I don't work for the GMAC, but I've been seeing highly problematic, right? If there was that arbitrage opportunity, right? Arbitrage, you know what that is, right? The ability to buy something and sell it immediately for, you know what I'm saying, right? If you could arbitrage the scores like that, it would just seem like, how could they let that happen? So I wouldn't go into this with the idea that you're going to significantly outscore one or the other. If I'm wrong, listen, I've been wrong before. Okay, fine. If you see that disparity, if you're 90th percentile on the new GMAT and you're 70th on the legacy for the same amount of studying, yeah, change to the legacy, change to the new GMAT, right? If you're 90th on the legacy and 50th on the new with the same level of studying, that's pretty instructive too. So when the new GMAT does come, you can at least use some data analytics, practice test scores to figure out which direction do you want to go. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Those are some really good questions. Does anybody have anything else we can answer for them? Anything they want to know? Strategies, insights? Happy to answer as many. And if I missed your question, you can put it back into the chat. I mean, there's a lot of them here. Did I miss anybody's question? If so, just put it back into the chat. I'll address it now if I can. How these schools reacting to the changes? Well, good question, Pooja. I assume they wanted those changes, or they were at least okay with those changes. Again, the process usually works with GMAC collaborating with business schools on how to make it a test that actually is a predictor of people's success in business school. You couldn't dissolve the relationship between business schools and the GMAC and make that process work, right? That's a marriage. So I would assume strongly that business schools know darn well that there's no SC, because probably if there is going to be no SC, they were probably the folks that just said, hey, maybe we don't need SC, or yeah, sure, we're okay with not having SC. I would have preferred RC going away. Me too. To be honest with you, Ayush would rather have the RC left than SC left. I share similar sentiments as Ayush. I guess that ship probably has sailed. a TTP going to extend the program duration? If I've already signed up for one plan, we'll have to figure that out, how that affects people's duration of their plans. But rest assured, if and when you need content for the new GMAT, we'll be sure you have it. Amir is asking about the ESR. Are they going to make the score report more ESR-like because business schools need to compare subsections? Could be. That's an interesting point. I haven't thought of that. The score reporting could give schools more information about users, and maybe that's going to translate down to the user level. So I think the change will make admissions more competitive. I don't know. It's a good question. Admissions are super competitive now. I mean, it's hard to see them getting more competitive. I mean, we've had an arms race in GMAT scores for years. The pandemic has only accelerated that arms race. I mean, yes, there's test optional, et cetera, but of the people applying the GMAT scores, as you know, they've really gone up. So I don't know. It's going to make it more competitive. It's hard to see business schools getting more competitive than they are now. We see a lot of really competitive, well-qualified, high-scoring people not getting accepted. I'm not an admissions officer. I don't know why that is. But, getting more competitive, it would be hard to envision more competitive. Yes, Pooja's asking, would they accept current version of the GMAT scores? Yes, I'm completely sure they would. AdCons, yeah, it would be unfair to stop accepting current legacy GMAT scores. I can't ever see anybody, including the GMAT or business schools, ever doing that to applicants. Again, over the decades, probably none of you guys like the GMAT. I mean, I don't blame you, but the truth of the matter is these have been organizations that have treated people fairly. I know there's issues like customer service issues or who the heck wants to retake the GMAT? It's an easy punching bag, but really at the end of the day, they're a business and schools are a business. And if they mistreat people, that's not very good business policy, right? So at the end of the day, they are doing their best to be student-centric and take good care of students as best they can. Do I think IR will be more emphasized than MIR? I don't know. I'm not an admissions officer, and I only say that just to not make it sound like I know. But my guess is no. I think the three scores will come together. I think IR is going to be more important than it is today. I don't necessarily think it'll be more important than Quant or Verbal. I think it's a trifecta of scores, data insights, Quant, Verbal. I think it's smart. I mean, it gives schools 3 big data points. That's funny. Why the average scores of people scoring 700 gone up so high in the last few years? Is TTP to blame? Probably. I mean, if you want the honest answer, right? Probably. I mean, look, you can go through target test prep and look, if you put in the work, pretty much guaranteed a 700 score. But it's not easy. I mean, TTP is not easy. I think a lot of you people using it are going to test to that. I mean, we're not giving you trade secrets. We're teaching you how to think like the test maker wants you to think. We're teaching you math. We're teaching you verbal at a very high level. So when you learn that, it just makes sense you should do well. So yeah, I mean, I know you're joking, but we probably did have something to do with the increase in GMAT scores over the years. That's probably not completely off base there. And you know what? I'm a little proud of that, to be honest. Other questions, ladies and gentlemen. Did I miss anyone's question? If so, put it back in. We wanted the point of this webinar to be stress reduction, Zen, don't worry. Not sure if anyone has any anxious questions or any questions. I answered them for you folks. All right, well, that seems like we've one more. How do you think DS will look like? I think DS will probably be DS in the data insights chapter. Again, I don't know for sure, but I'd be surprised if data sufficiency changed. My guess would be DS would just exist in the data insights chapter alongside integrated reasoning questions. How the algorithm works? Well, the good news is, or I guess the bad news is, we don't even know how the algorithm works now. I mean, we have basic information, but at the end of the day, Only the GMAT knows how the algorithm works. And I'm sure they're using a lot more machine learning these days, a lot more AI than they were in the past. So who knows? Tough question. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you. I hope you found that helpful, ladies and gentlemen. Certainly reach out, email us, if you have any questions, hit us on intercom. Should any of this information change, or should we ratify any of this information and know it's true? We'll let you guys all know. We'll probably do another webinar. Don't worry if things change. You're using TTP. We'll be sure you have access to the right materials. Don't worry about that. And otherwise, wish you all a great day. Good health, prosperity, fun, good GMAT scores, and thanks a lot for hanging out with us today. We really appreciate everyone. Okay, take care of yourself.
Hey, thanks everybody.
Okay,
have a good day.